Welcome to our trail assessment class. First we're going to take a walk. Here we have a trail that is perpendicular to the fall line, but the trail gradient is climbing in this beautiful area. Take a quick jump with us to the summit, and then we'll go back and give some trail definitions. Aspect is just the fancy term for compass degrees. Let's just take a look at what's to the south of us. At some point you have to make a distinction whether you're using magnetic readings or whether you're converting your readings to true north. Slope angle is how steep the slope is right here. The trail alignment is how perpendicular or in line with the slope angle the trail is. And then slope gradient is how steep is the trail right here, which we can see is 9.5 degrees. This trail's on the Forest Service list to realign, get it out of being so steep and full of loose rocks, and put in lower angle switchbacks up on this hillside. This is the trail the Forest Service would like to realign, and you can see why when we look down here and it's at 27 degrees, which is great for a ski run but not for a hiking trail. Here's that same trail, and you can see that it is deeply entrenched, like 5 feet deep through here. Straight down, really steep, stream rain runoff, spring snowmelt runoff has really entrenched this trail, which is why it needs to be moved. We're looking at the main trail here, the part that's 27 degrees, full of loose rocks, which has caused people to walk around it. And you can see multiple trails that are being generated by people avoiding that loose rock. But unfortunately this is as steep or steeper, so these places are eroding and will be just as rocky as over there. So the Forest Service really needs to get in here, lower the gradient, get the water off the path, and then adding mountain bikes just accelerates the erosion when you're on a slope really over 10 degrees. They're either skidding on the way down or digging on the way up. Otherwise, this is a really lovely place. As you've seen, we've been hiking up this trail, and I'm going to sidetrack for just a minute because I always do right here. We call this the geology of the ages. Over here is the limestone bedrock. And as I swing this way, we'll cut through a little bit of a yellow layer and into these, they're brown the way they're stained right here, but they're really a gray. So these are granitic intrusions, long time ago, millions of years ago, into the limestone. And what's interesting, so we have an igneous rock, the contact between the limestone and the hot igneous rock metamorphosed the limestone over here into a yellow marble. So we have all three major rock types: igneous, metamorphic, and a sedimentary limestone right next to each other. We need to take a look at water drainage down the trail, and looking at the cross section of a trail. This is a trail that's particularly well drained. It's had a lot of work recently. This flat cross-section trail won't drain as well as that outslope trail, but will drain better than this cupped area, which is going to eventually run a canal of water with rain and snow melt. It's a beautiful spot. And we are going to measure slope angle, which is how steep the hill is, versus alignment of the trail, and we can add gradient to it right here. I'm looking straight down this slope, and I have an instrument to help me with alignment. It's just a regular protractor. This is an unusual protractor because it has this lever that I can swing. A string or even your finger works just fine as long as you start here at the 0 point. And I'm pointing that straight downhill. Then I'm going to back up and align the back end of the protractor to the trail. Put this back on the slope angle, the steepest part of the slope out there. And I can see that I'm really right there at 90 degrees. So this is a perfectly perpendicular to the steepest part of the slope, or the slope angle. So the alignment here is 90 degrees perpendicular. So the way to measure how steep the slope is, I can use a protractor again, and I prefer using a string on this one. But here's the protractor, and I just sight eyeball down to where I think would be the same eyeball height to a person standing down there. And then I look over here at where the string is, and then count how many degrees off of 90 that is. So this looks like a 23 degree slope. So we have a 23 degree slope angle. We have a perpendicular alignment, or 90 degrees to the slope angle. And then the steepness of the trail we can do. Usually I use the camera or the phone like you saw, but I could also do a slope angle here by having someone else kneeling down, run that same protractor edge, and take a look over here. And that was too steep. So the trail right here is, I gotta swing that into the sun to see it, looks like 8 degrees. So slope angle, alignment, and trail gradient. To measure entrenchment, or how deeply eroded the trail is from flat, we have a cup-shaped trail here, and what I've done is I've anchored my string on both sides at about what I estimate to be ground level before it got entrenched. Now it looks like it's high in the sky because I put the camera on the ground, but you'll see when I measure it that, maybe it's hard to read there, that the entrenchment here is about 6 inches. Okay, thanks for going on that walk with us this morning. We were able to give some definitions, explain some of the terms on that walk with such great views. We're now back down at the bottom, and I'm going to run through the form with you. It should be fairly quick because we have most of our definitions and measurement tools already worked out. Our quick trail assessment form is pretty simple. Starts out here once again with a name. I've already filled out a lot of this. General location, I'm up in Big Cottonwood Canyon. It's July 5th. Let's see, this trail goes from Silver Lake to Twin Lakes Pass, and then on up to Patsy Marley. The trail class we're going to come back to in just a minute here. It's easier to do that when you're done and after you've seen the whole trail. Let's see, also we want to be able to identify where we started, and there's a trail junction where the Twin Lakes Trail splits from the Lake Solitude junction, and that's the beginning of our measurements. Let's see, type of uses allowed on this trail. Hiking, mountain biking, I think's allowed. I certainly see it. That's the end of that one. Okay, total distance. I did measure it on a map, so I checked that. And then the units that we are using are miles, and we found it to be 2.2 miles. And then because we stop several times, this is 2.2 miles. If we stop every quarter mile, that will give us 9 points where we do our measurements. So we're going to do these in quarter mile intervals. Hopefully you'll have a GPS. Hopefully your boss will tell you, or you will work out and decide what level of detail that you really need. You saw earlier that there's a section that's really too steep. That probably needed to be measured at least 3 times instead of twice with our quarter mile sections. So here we are, the description of direction of travel, starting at Silver Lake, going to Patsy Marley via the Twin Lakes Pass. Trail position, we'll get to that. I want to go back here to trail class, and it's on the descriptions are on the back of this form. Actually, it's the second page and third page. So we're going to go straight to that next. Forest Service matrix, and I've already made a decision, so I'm just going to run through what I chose. You will have this form. You can read all of the rest. I don't need to read all this for you. So trail attributes, the first two are tread and traffic flow, and the second one is obstacles. I read through all this, decided this is a class 2 trail. You've seen quite a bit of it. It's moderately developed. So the tread is continuous, discernible. You saw that. It can be narrow in spots, and it can be rough. Other spots it was pretty wide. Single lane with minor allowances constructed for passing. So sometimes it's single, sometimes it's got enough room to pass. Everything was native materials. And let's see, this is obstacles. So obstacles are common. We had lots of rocks to step over. It is a challenging trail. Blockages are cleared. Yeah, several trees had been cut and cleared off of the trail so that people weren't having to go around trees and creating new trails. And the vegetation, yeah, there were places where it leaned over the trail, brushed your legs. Continuing on the next page, trail attributes, constructed features and trail elements. I'm going to switch over to class 2. Moderately developed. Structures are limited in size, scale, quantity, typically constructed of native materials. Sure, there are some places where they've placed some flat rocks to help you out, but there's really not a lot of other construction other than shovel work. Structures adequate to protect the trail. Yeah, there are a few places where you've got logs on the side to help keep people in place. Natural fords and no bridges. Bridges were not needed on this one. You either could jump them or a couple sticks, logs, rocks that you could cross on. And here we go, signs. Except at the trail junctions there weren't any. So route indicating signs limited to junction. Route markers present when trail location is not evident. That wasn't needed. No blazes on the trees, no cairns. Regulatory and resource protection signs were infrequent. They were just back at the trailhead and at a previous junction. Designation sign was infrequent. Outside wilderness. This is outside wilderness. And now there was no summit sign at Patsy Marley. There were no signs at the pass. Information interpretive signing was only at the parking lot. And typical recreation environs and experience, natural and essentially unmodified. So, and then the recreation opportunity spectrum, typically primitive to roaded natural. And wilderness ROS, typically primitive to semi-primitive. So trail class off that Forest Service matrix on a 1 to 5, I decided that that was a 2. Alright, so now going to the form itself. The form does have a matrix for each one of these, a table. There are more than we're going to need for this, but our first stop would get marked in the first rectangle. But let's take a look. Trail position. Record into the table one of the following numbers for each stage. So the first choice here, are we at the top of the ridge? No. Are we along a hillside? Yeah. Are we in the valley bottom? Almost. We're definitely not in a ridge. I mean in the wash bottom, and we're out of the riparian. It's not wet here except on a couple of little spots where we have to cross. So I have to decide here between along a hillside and in a valley bottom. Here's the trail. There we go. And opening this up, this is all hillside around us up to here. It's not very steep here at the beginning. And the valley bottom is over there a couple hundred feet. So I'm going to call this on the hillside. And along the hillside is a number 2. So in the first box, we're putting a number 2. So the next time I stop in a quarter mile, I'll fill in this one. A quarter mile later, I'll fill in that one, so on down the line. But we're still here in the top left box. We've left trail position. When we're all the way done, we will sum all of the number 1s, all of the number 2s, all of the number 3s into these spots. Okay, we are quickly moving on to trail slope alignment angle, and we are going to measure it, and then we will say if it's right in line with the fall line, it gets a 0 all the way up to 90 degrees or perpendicular. So let's just walk over there right now. So slope alignment, we are going to measure it. We did bring a protractor, and the protractor I've already set up. There it is. The base of it is running parallel along with the direction of the trail. I've already tipped that little angle pointer into the fall line, and when I move in close, well, I can't keep it in focus, sorry about that. I've walked up closer, changed the setting on the camera. There you can see that it's 80 degrees. We're also asked at this point what is our compass direction or aspect, and I've put red Fred in the shed there, and looking in the direction of travel, which is the mirror direction, which is perpendicular to the fall line, which is parallel to the base of the protractor, I can see that we are very, very close to due west. And for this form, we only need to go to quarters like west by northwest. So this one's close, it's going to be west. So here's what I've written down. 80 degrees of alignment, so it's almost perpendicular, and it's west. So here's what they're, some reminders here, 30 degrees off of the fall line. So off of the fall line, I should have written that as 10 then. So we need to fix that. It's 10 degrees off of the fall line. I'll have to fix that later. And then over here it's telling us that we do write the degrees off of the fall line with a slash followed by the compass aspect in quarters. Flipping the page over, the next category is grade or gradient, the degrees of trail steepness. With road building, they convert things to percent. Usually with hiking, they degrees. And are we going to measure it or estimate it? And we're going to pull out the downloaded app on my phone that does slope angles. This is the app on my phone, and it's just called Bubble Angle, and I lay it so that it's parallel as best I can get to the tread of the trail at this point. And you can see we're in a pretty close to flat spot. It says it's 1.4 degrees. The blue is seeking horizontal, and then the top and bottom edge of the phone are at 1.4 degrees. And if we look out here across the trail, you can see it's not steep at all. So gradient right here, 1.4 degrees. It asks one more thing here. Total elevation change, which I picked up off of the map. We started at 87,035 feet, and we finished at around 10.2. So our total elevation change was right around 1800. I can fix that later if I want to. Brief description of fluidity of grade, and all I would say here is, low angle at start, and then often steep most of the trail. Next category, water drainage, which is often identifiable by the shape of the trail tread, and we have a number to choose from here. Outslope means that the slope is tipping outward. We saw some of that in the video. Inslope is pretty hard to tell from cupped, but you might be able to. Cupped, we did do a measure of cupped. We saw a picture where it was cupped by 5 feet. Some of that helped by a bulldozer when they built the mining road. Cupped, we showed how to measure it, stretch a string straight across, and then measure how deep the deepest spot is below that string. Crowned would mean that the trail's up on a hump. Those are pretty rare. I do see them sometimes in southern Utah. They're great for drainage. And then a flat cross section. And since I'm not seeing much cupping at all, when I look out here, that log makes it a little bit cupped. So we could measure it, and I bet we get an inch or two. So it is slightly cupped. It's not outsloping at this point. So cupped with depth is a number 3. So I would put in this first one a 3, and I would say 2 inches maybe. The last category on this simple form is tread material, and tread width. So we have choices. We have bedrock. You see a lot of that in southern Utah. Cobbles, gravel. Cobbles are the size of your fist, the size of a softball. Gravel is more down to marble size. Sand, we know. Dirt, I'd call this one a dirt trail. And man-made structures. So get to some of the higher spots, we'll end up in cobbles. So below several of these, so below the water drainage that we filled in, that was 3, slightly cupped with 2 inches. We are then asked at the end of the report to sum and report the percentage of each category. So if we've got 9 sites and every one of them is cupped, then it would be 100% over here in cupped. So that gives you the idea there. And looking down at tread material, same thing, they're asking to sum to the percentage of each of the 5 categories. So probably, by the time we get through 9 stops, bedrock is probably going to be 0, cobbles might be half, gravel I don't remember any, sand, and dirt, so dirt's probably going to be half, just trying to remember back from what we did this morning. You have a page of criteria that you need to fill out that apply to the spaces in between your stops, and they're about multiple trailing, water and mud, and your general impressions. So you start at your starting point, so you won't have anything to write there because you haven't gone anywhere yet. But multiple trailing. Since your last measurement stop, what percent of the trail had multiple trails? So did you stop and measure it with a tape measure, or are you just estimating? And again, because we haven't gone anywhere yet at our starting point, we don't have anything to say, but you went on the walk with me this morning and you saw that some of these stops, or the spaces in between them, will be over 100%, and some will be 0 as we get there. And then briefly describe the trailing. So is it multiple, is it many, is it just one? And briefly describe the root cause. Is it because of mud? Is it because it's rocky and steep? The trail's blocked by fallen trees. So what a spot to briefly put that. Alright, water and mud. Since your last assessment stop, what percentage of the trail had water or mud? Did you measure it with a tape measure, or did you estimate it? So again, nothing at this point, but you will start writing in percentages here. And we also need an estimate of how usual or unusual you think the time you visited was. So do you think your visit was 1, particularly wet, 2, unusually dry, or 3, average? So you will also be answering that up here. Okay, then general impressions of the trail, maintenance needed between each of the stops. And, oops, I passed it by. You can have more than one number here. During that stretch, were there any fallen trees that need to be cut? with just minor shovel work, take care of any problems. Are there multiple trails that need to be blocked? Is the place so wet that you need to harden it with gravel, with flat rocks, anyway, a number of things here? Or is it so wet, is it crossing a meadow, that this would be a place to add a boardwalk? Or is it so far gone that you really need to relocate it, which we saw for parts of this trail? And then there are going to be other things that you can, with the asterisk of all of these, there's some space at the end to describe any of those issues that don't fit with just a number, and you feel like whoever comes here next should have some description of. So with this simple form, it doesn't take me very long. It would have made more sense if I were really doing the full thing to do this on the trail this morning, but that was just a hike with my wife. So I would now continue on. We estimated we'd be doing 9 stops, so each one of these categories gets filled out 9 times, and then some, not all of them, have a little bit of summary work at the end. And also at the end would be where you go back and fill in the trail category. And that's our form. It's pretty simple. I have added to the back of your forms a protractor that will do everything you need it to do, just photocopied onto the page. And I have a little bit of a measure up to 10 inches, but you're welcome to bring your own. They're a little bit easier to work with than with this paper version, but it's not bad.